But on Mondays, we talk about murder mysteries. And this is Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
Welcome to Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Courtney, welcome once again.
Thank you for having me.
You are the queen of murder mystery.
Yes, yes.
Tell us what we'll be talking about today. It's kind of show business related in the shadows or in the aura that's still left over from Oscars.
It is. It is. I was working on another case, and then you and I were chatting on Saturday.
You're working on another case, will you?
I was as a true crime analyst.
Yes.
And then you and I chatted on Saturday, and you expressed some interest in better understanding this story, and then it was referenced last night during the Oscars.
Well, how about that? Yeah.
Quickly, I wanna make an editorial note that last week with the story "Lady in the Fridge," it was actually provided to me by California Fireman, I know his handle on Twitter, as well as Kim. So I do want to give him credit.
Oh, you had said that Kim had given it to you.
Yeah,
You're saying
yes.
that. Okay.
But California Fireman gave it to me as well.
Okay.
So I want to thank everybody for sending me stories because it is really appreciated, and also there's the support for this segment means so much. So
Great.
But today we are doing the story of Robert Blake, which last night he was referenced in the Oscars during the "Give Me a Blake" segment.
Oh, yes.
For the memoriam. So I'm sure that most people know this story in some capacity, but I'm going to explain it in a little bit more detail. So Robert Blake, child actor, most famous for his roles in the film In Cold Blood in 1967 and the TV show Beretta, which was in the 70s. And he was married to a woman in the early 2000s by the name of Bonnie Lee Bakley.
Okay.
She was 44 at the time of her murder. He was 68. She was the second wife of Robert Blake, and he was the 10th husband of Bonnie Lee Bakley.
Wow.
And what's really interesting...
That is sick.
But it gets a little crazier. Her second husband, who she was married to the longest, was her first cousin.
Wow.
And her eighth husband, his name was Glenn Wolfe. He was a Baptist minister. He has the record for the most marriages. He was married 31 times.
That was one of her husbands?
One of her husbands.
Wow.
Yeah, just a really interesting...
How about that, Albert? Albert likes to talk about Larry King all the time. Because Larry King was married 8 times. 31 times. Wow.
Exactly. And so she leaves high school at 16 and she moves to New York, and she was actually running this business called Lonely Hearts, where she would advertise in magazines and men would send her money, and she would send photographs of herself and other women in exchange for that money. It reminded me a little bit of OnlyFans.
Yeah, it's totally OnlyFans.
Yeah. And I bring that up because that background of Bonnie Lee Bakley actually created some kind of lack of confidence and sort of insecurity in the relationship on Robert Blake's part. So they meet in a jazz club. She's actually dating Christian Brando, Marlon Brando's son. But he's in jail, and she meets Robert Blake, and they begin a relationship, and she ends up pregnant. And so
she ends up pregnant?
She ends up pregnant after meeting Robert Blake at a jazz club. And he wants her to not have the child, and she moves forward and has the baby. There's a paternity test because they're not sure who the father of the baby is, and the baby's father ends up being Robert Blake. And so Bakley moves in with Robert Blake after getting married in November of 2000. She doesn't actually ever live in the house. He has her live in a guest house on the property with the child, and the child's name is Rose. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a picture of, for those that are watching, this is baby Rose, and this is adult Rose, actually, on the left-hand side. And so she lives in the guest house, and she has a relationship with Blake, but it's mostly it's mostly, I don't know the word I want to use, sexual in nature. Like they're not living together. They're not really this happy couple.
Oh,
there you go.
It's a one-dimensional relationship, and that dimension is sexual. Okay.
There are some challenges there. The relationship is rocky. He actually hires a private investigator, as I mentioned before, to get more information around her. He's very upset that she's put him in this marriage that he doesn't want to be with, a child that he doesn't want to have. And he finds out that she's still running Lonely Hearts from the guest house, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So
she's still sending pictures out and that kind of thing. So there's no love lost between Blake and his wife.
Yeah, no, 6 months in, they're not celebrating.
Okay.
They're living somewhat separate lives, and he doesn't trust her. So he starts to devise a plan to kill her, allegedly. And he has his security / handyman who's been helping him a little bit. And he also reaches out to 2 stuntmen to inquire about their killing Bonnie.
Their availability to help with the killing. Just calling to inquire about your availability. Yeah. Oh, I'm available. I'm just wrapping up a shoot in about 2 days. What do you need? Well, it's a different kind of project. I want to kill my wife. No.
There is that. He left this crazy trail of witnesses and encounters. He actually buys a calling card with one of the stuntmen to only communicate through the calling card, but then only uses the calling card from his home phone. So the police know that he's only calling the stuntmen.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
It's just really not well thought through.
It's a wild idea, for sure.
So on the evening of May 4th, 2001. Now, remember, they were just married in November of 2000. So we're talking, what is that, 6-8 months? Mm-hmm. Robert Blake takes Bonnie Lee Bakley to Vitello's, a restaurant in Studio City. Mm-hmm. If you go down to the next slide, for those that are watching. All right, so this is Vitello's. Vitello's does not look like this any longer. But at the time, this was Vitello's.
Looks like a nice place.
Yeah, a nice Italian place.
Let me finish. To kill your spouse.
Can you let him finish?
Yeah, all right.
And so they go in and they have dinner. And if you go down, there's actually something on the menu that was named after Robert Blake because he was there.
He was there
much.
so frequently.
Yeah.
The
So it's
fusilli a minestra alla Robert Blake.
Yeah. Also the meal that you eat before you kill somebody. And then he actually liked table number 42, which is this booth here. It's an image of the booth. He sat there. It was kind of close to the door, but this was what he ate every time he went, and this is where he sat every time he went. And he visited Vitello's quite often. It was his favorite restaurant. So they go and eat at Vitello's, and they leave at about 9:30 is when he checks out of the restaurant. Now, he did not use the valet. He parked the car about a block and a half away on a residential street next to a construction site and next to a dumpster. By the way, as you would, right? Like, why use the convenience of a valet? So he parks there, and he justifies it by saying that all of these men are coming after Bonnie Lee Bakley because of her lonely hearts. There's a lot of men that feel upset by really not connecting with her, what have you. And so he justifies it by parking a block and a half away because of those reasons. That is also why he justifies bringing a gun to dinner.
Wow.
So he has a gun with him at dinner, and they check out of dinner. They pay the check. They leave at 9:30. They walk to the car. And when they get to the car, that's perfect. Robert Blake realizes that he's forgot his gun in the booth.
He's forgotten his what?
His gun, the gun that he brought. He forgot it in the booth, as one does, right? You bring a gun to dinner, you leave it in the booth, no red flags.
Yeah.
So he runs back to Vitello's, allegedly.
Right.
Picks up the gun. He drinks 2 glasses of water.
Oh, when he's back
there.
at the...
Yeah. I mean... He's thirsty after running back a block and a half.
Yeah, I don't remember what happens. I know. Okay, go ahead. This is great.
Yeah, I know. So he leaves the gun
I didn't
in
remember these details.
the booth. He drinks 2 glasses of water while he's back at Vitello's. And then he goes back to the car, and Bonnie Lee Bakley is shot twice.
Oh my! I mean, he arrives to find her shot twice.
To find her shot twice.
So we know he didn't do it with that gun, right? Because he was in the restaurant, right?
Yeah, allegedly.
Well, I mean, he didn't. He was in the restaurant, wasn't
Well, a lot of witnesses don't remember him going back.
I see.
The busboy doesn't remember a gun left in the booth that he bussed after he left.
Oh.
So there are witnesses that were brought into trial that did corroborate that, like, he never went back. He was not back. That never happened.
Wow.
So he goes back. He finds his wife shot twice, once in the cheek, I believe, and once in the neck on the right side, because she was sitting in the passenger seat of the car. Now, if you're watching, you can see the image of the car. A neighbor calls the EMT and the police, and they come and they get Bonnie Lee Bakley. And it's interesting because when Robert Blake goes and knocks on that neighbor's door, he says, "We've been mugged and she's injured," not that she's shot in the face. And so the EMT puts her into the ambulance, and she actually dies at the hospital at 10:15. So he is, if you go down, he's distraught, but he is acting a little strange. And there was one point where the EMT said to him, "She's going to be okay." And he didn't react how you think that he might react.
Mother effer! Are you kidding?
He was not happy.
I said all this stuff with these stunt guys. I did the whole routine, the way we rehearsed it, and she's going to be okay?
Exactly.
That is not what I wanted.
Yeah, that wasn't what he wanted to hear.
I've told you, it's never easy being in this business.
The business of murder. We only have another minute or two, so take me to the...
Okay, so he's charged with her murder, and they find the murder weapon, which is a gun from World War II, actually, issued to the German army. It's a Walter P-38. They find that in the dumpster. But he
Shout out to the German army. Right. Okay.
He had a different gun. Long story short, they arrest him. They charge him with her murder, but he is acquitted. He is acquitted of the murder.
That's what I thought. That's what. But didn't they retry him or something? What happened?
No, the civil trial that came from her children. She had 4 children. He was found guilty or liable and was ordered to pay $15 million, which is where he declared bankruptcy. But quickly, part of the reason that he was acquitted was the gunshot residue. And he had only 5 particles. And shooting a gun like that, he would have had at least 100 particles. What they failed to mention in court, or maybe what wasn't communicated to the jury, is that he was rubbing his hands in the grass and in his hair. He was taking care of that.
But he did have gun residue.
He did have 5
Well, I mean, how do you
particles of gun
explain that
residue.
gun residue at all?
I don't know. He was carrying a gun. I don't know.
But I mean, it seems indefensible that you would have gun residue on your hand if you didn't discharge a firearm.
I mean, I can't say for sure. Maybe it was
They needed keen attorney Mark Thompson involved in this, didn't they? They needed a prosecutor. All right, we're wrapping up. What is this that we're seeing?
These are just more pictures of where the car was parked. This is a note, if you go down, that was written. It's basically a what to bring when you want to murder your wife and get rid of a body note. He defended it as being something that the handyman was buying because he was constructing his home. But I feel like if I gave this list of things for Mark to pick up at Home Depot, I'd be in a lot of trouble.
Wow. The kind of things on the list are what? What?
You've got shovel, sledgehammer, duct tape,
I see.
Bleach, the things that you would need to dispose of a body in the desert, which is what they were accusing him of this list.
But they did. But in the end, they didn't bury her body. It was discovered there in the car. And anyway, so he was acquitted in the criminal case, but found guilty in the civil.
Yeah, I think all the solicitation he did for help with the handyman and the two stuntmen did not help because nobody was going to help him kill his wife.
Yeah.
And so then he was acquitted. He got remarried. And then, unfortunately, I know this is going to come as a surprise, that marriage did not work out either.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
well,
so,
it's...
What?
Yeah, all right. So, Courtney, thank you for walking us through the Robert Blake thing. I didn't remember the going back in and then stop to get the gun, I remember. But then he had a couple of glasses of water just to give whoever is involved in the murder more time.
I mean, if you're going to have an alibi, you really need to lean into it. And so he constructed this narrative about what he did in the restaurant.
It's kind of...
by which nobody remembers any of this.
Last quick question. Nobody heard gunshots while he was in the restaurant?
That's what I was wondering, too. It's like, what did he use to make the gun silent? And I don't know enough about pistols, and I don't know.
But so the actual killing occurred, it could have occurred while he was there, not while he was in the restaurant.
I don't think he ever went back to the restaurant.
Okay,
I think that was just killed her. That was just a story that he told the cops.
It's pretty damning.
Nobody saw him go back in.
All right.
But the adding of the details is quite ridiculous, right? So
thank you for joining us, Courtney.
Thank you for
everybody.
having me. Thank you so
Before we
much.
let her go, I wanted to ask her a question about the speaking of dead people, the in memoriam segment at the Oscars, right?
Yeah.
And last night they didn't have everyone that had passed away that was in the film industry, and they had this kind of QR code that said, for more dead, you can scan here.
That's right.
I just wanted to think that, were those the second-rate dead that didn't make it to the A-list, and you were insulted even in death? Did anyone else think this might have been in poor taste?
Oh, that is really funny.
That's so funny.
No, it's true. They always leave people out, and here they had a QR code.
And finally, we used that technology for what it was intended for. Let's be honest.
Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.